There's a lot of talk of methylation tests, but often people don't understand really what they do or how they're useful. I'm going to explain how it works, but also the two situations that I think it can be helpful in, but also how you can get that exact same benefit without necessarily needing to do a methylation test. So at its most basic level, methylation is a process that your body uses to keep things running smoothly. It focuses on these sorts of things and is constantly there just working in the background. So in a nutshell, your methylation genes influence how efficiently your body processes certain nutrients from the environment and converts them into the active form that help your body run smoothly. Things like B vitamins and folate, for example. But some of these tend to be less efficient and are the ones that struggle first when your body is under stress or high demand. So methylation works by passing around tiny chemical tags called methyl groups. Your body donates these tags to different processes when they're needed, then recycles them so that they can be used again. So it's basically a little methyl tag that it gives and then recycles, and really how efficient your body is at doing that process will dictate really how resilient you are when it comes under pressure. Because to understand when people say people have broken methylation genes, let's take a step back and understand exactly what's going on. So imagine your genetics a little bit like a printer. So the rod that the cartridge runs along, the rod is the genes, and then the cartridge running along it is the proteins that are made based on what they read from the rod. Now, in methylation and various other things, we can have, imagine that the rod is dented so that although the cartridge can go along and print normally, that area, it's a little bit less efficient and doesn't kind of print it as well as it should do. So when we're testing someone's methylation genes, we're looking for those little dents, which we call SNPs. They don't change what genes you have, they just influence how efficiently those genes work. So most SNPs don't cause problems, they just explain why two people might respond differently to the same lifestyle or nutrients. So methylation genetics don't tell us what's wrong, they tell us where we're sensitive. And the way that I explain this to patients is, imagine there is a lot of rainfall in the city, and the rain represents stress, overtraining, overwork, just putting your body under pressure. Now, eventually, if you have enough rainfall, the city will start to flood. And the areas of flooding are where your particular methylation genes can't cope, and you'll start to see problems arise. Said another way, if you start seeing flooding, it can show you that you're putting your body under too much pressure. So genetic testing doesn't tell us that flooding will happen. It tells us where the flooding is most likely to show up first and where we should keep an eye on when the rain gets heavy. So the next natural question is, well, what's the big deal with all this? Why does it matter? And really, there are a few areas clinically where I think it makes a significant difference sometimes to people's health. But the main one is around B vitamins, homocysteine, and nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is what allows blood vessels to relax and widen. So when it drops, blood flow to the heart, brain, and kidneys suffer. So I'll put the full pathway up here so that you can see it fully. But the very simple way to think about it is nitric oxide is good for blood flow, homocysteine stops nitric oxide, and methylated B vitamins bring down homocysteine. So for the methylation testing and all the things that it shows, really one of the biggest things is this downstream amount of homocysteine that we have in the body. And it's a good marker of how well our body's coping. So I'll explain now why that relates to people wanting to know their methylation patterns so that they can reduce homocysteine. So B vitamins lower homocysteine by recycling it into something called methionine. But the thing is, it's not any old B vitamins. It's something called methylated B vitamins. So when we go back to earlier in the video and we talk about how good our methylation genes are at giving a methyl group, it's that we take those B vitamins from the environment and we turn them into methylated B vitamins by giving that methyl group. So why does this matter? Because this is probably the most practical part of what we can do when it comes to our methylation genes. Around 30 to 40% of us have a gene mutation that makes us less efficient at taking those B vitamins from the environment and folate as well and turning them into methylfolate and methylated B vitamins. So the way that I describe it to patients, it's like you can add as much B vitamins as you want, but if you don't have the ability to convert it, or you don't have the right type, which is the methylated B vitamins, it's really just adding more to something that you're not really efficient at converting. The way I describe it, it's a bit like going to New York and trying to buy things with euros, right? If you can't convert them, then it's almost a useless currency. You can add more and more euros, but it's not really going to help solve the problem. The way I even describe it a little bit further is that you can maybe find the odd shop that is going to accept euros, but they're going to give you a terrible rate, hence the inefficiency of not being able to convert those B vitamins into the methylated type. So the way that we bypass that whole situation is, instead of going through that whole conversion, which for some people can be inefficient, is to just bypass it altogether by taking some methylated vitamins. Now, this is where these methylation tests to know our genetics are nice to know, but ultimately all we're trying to do is make sure that we keep our homocysteine in check. So really a more direct way to look at it is just to measure our homocysteine, keep it below a certain level, and if it's high, we can take some methylated B vitamins to bring it down. Now, methylation tests can look at various other genes and things, but really the only other area that I found it to be useful clinically is with the COMT gene, which basically dictates your ability to break down the fight or flight neurochemicals that are released in the brain. And really, for those people who have trouble breaking down their fight or flight hormones, they'll have symptoms like their minds will be racing in the night and they'll struggle to get to sleep. Now, this is probably the only other situation clinically where I've found that you can supplement with something called trimethylglycine, or otherwise known as betaine, which can help with the breakdown of that and stop those racing thoughts at night and help people get off to sleep if they're having what you call induction insomnia, so difficulty getting to sleep. But again, although a methylation test is nice to have and it's nice to know those things, you can often bypass the need for having it just by, you'll pretty much know if you're having racing thoughts at night that are stopping you going to sleep, or if you're having maybe too much caffeine late in the day. But often just trialing that for 2 weeks and seeing if your sleep improves is enough to get an idea of whether it's something significant. And that's really the core premise of my thinking behind these sorts of tests. Yes, they are nice to know, but ultimately all they're going to tell you is your likelihood of having a certain thing show up, when actually you can just go directly to the thing and measure that to see if it's actually showed up itself and then address it if it comes up. So really it's about understanding your body, how it copes with pressure, and when it might need extra support. It doesn't necessarily have to be a supplement. It can also be with good nutrition. And if you watch this video here, I show you exactly how to build a diet that's specifically suited to your body rather than trying to fit your body to a generic diet. So I hope you find that useful. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.